I still remember the sound. Not the words. Not even the yelling. Sound. My front door slammed so hard the picture frame in the hallway tilted sideways, like the house itself flinched. And then my son was standing there, breathing like he'd run from a fire. His wild face red, hands clenched. "Mom," he said, forcing this strange fake softness into his voice. "I'm glad you're here with me, lad." Like we were in some kind of reunion scene. Like he hadn't just stormed into my home without knocking. Like he hadn't been ignoring me for months unless he needed something. I didn't move. I didn't even blink at first. Because something in his tone told me this wasn't love. It was panic wearing a smile. "What are you doing here, Jason?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Even though my stomach had already dropped. He took a step inside like he owned the place. Like he was checking what was still his. "I need to talk to you," he said quickly. "Now." Behind him, his car sat crooked in my driveway, still running. Like he'd left it that way because he didn't plan on staying long. Just long enough to fix whatever I'd messed up. I looked at his jaw tight. His eyes hard. That same look he used to get as a teenager when he'd been caught in a lie and tried to talk his way out. And suddenly I wasn't looking at my son. I was looking at a man who felt entitled to something that didn't belong to him. "You should have called," I said. He laughed. Just a short, sharp sound. "Yeah, well, you've been real hard to reach lately." That was rich. Because the truth was I hadn't changed. He had. And the moment I realized that was the moment everything started. It began with a text. One message. A few cold lines that made my hands shake so badly I spilled coffee onto the kitchen table. The same table my husband and I ate at for decades. The same table my son used to do homework at while I brought him snacks and told him he could be anything. The text said, "Don't expect me to take care of you when you're old. I have my own life and family." No argument before it. No explanation after it. Just that. Like I was a burden he wanted to toss out early. Before the bill came due. And you know what I sent back? 2 words. "Okay." Because I wasn't going to beg my own child for basic decency. I wasn't going to plead for love. But I was going to listen. And that same afternoon, I made a call that changed the entire direction of my life. Called my attorney. And as my son stood in my doorway now, pretending he was glad to see me, my phone felt heavier in my pocket. Because I already knew something he didn't. He wasn't here for me. He was here for what he thought was coming to him. And in the next few days, he was going to find out I'd rewritten the ending. Jason stepped further inside like my silence was permission. He didn't ask if he could sit. He just dropped onto my couch. My couch, the one I'd saved up for after my husband passed, because I wanted something in this house to feel new again. Something that didn't smell like grief. He looked around, scanning the room, and I could almost see the math happening in his head. Like he was calculating the value of my life in furniture and square footage. Then he leaned back and said, "So, what's going on with you lately?" I stared at him. "What's going on with me?" He shrugged like I was the one acting strange. "You've been distant. And I've been hearing things." "Hearing things from who?" He hesitated. Just for a split second. But I caught it. And that told me everything. "You've been talking to Linda," I said. His eyes flicked up. "She's my wife, Mom." I nodded slowly. "Yes. And she hates me." He scoffed like I was being dramatic, but the scoff was too fast, like he needed it to be true. "She doesn't hate you," he said. "She just thinks you don't respect boundaries." I almost laughed. Boundaries. Linda had moved into our lives like a polite invasion. At first, she smiled too much and called me sweetie like we were best friends. Then, slowly she started correcting me. The way I cooked, the way I spoke, even the way I hugged my own son. And my son didn't notice. Or maybe he did and he liked having someone else take the wheel. Jason leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Mom, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to figure out what the plan is." "The plan?" "Yeah." He nodded. "For the future. Like, Your will, your house, your accounts. All of that. There it was. Just laid out. No shame. No softness. No pretending anymore. I felt something inside me go quiet. Like my body had been bracing for this conversation for weeks. And now that it was here, it finally stopped shaking. Is that why you came? Yes. To talk about my death. Jason rolled his eyes. Don't make it weird. I held his gaze. You made it weird when you sent me that text. His face tightened. You're still on that. Still on that. I repeated. It was the moment I realized you'd already decided I don't matter. He stood up abruptly, pacing a few steps like my words were physically uncomfortable. I was angry, okay? Linda and I were stressed. You don't understand how hard it is. Stop, I said, sharper than I meant to. Don't blame your wife for your mouth. He froze. And for a second the room felt like a standoff. Then his voice dropped into something calmer. Calculated. Fine. Look, I didn't mean it like that. But we need clarity. We need to know what you're doing. What I'm doing, I echoed. Jason nodded. Linda thinks you're planning something. Like moving money around. She said you met with someone. My heart thudded once. So he didn't know for sure. He was fishing. I kept my face neutral, even though my pulse was loud in my ears. Why would Linda think that? Jason stared at me too long. Then he smiled. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was a smile that said, I'm going to get the truth one way or another. Because, he said softly, people don't change unless they're hiding something. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a conversation. It was an interrogation. And I had no idea how far they were willing to go to get what they wanted. Until my phone buzzed in my pocket. One new message. From a number I didn't recognize. It said, don't sign anything. They're coming for you. And my blood turned ice cold. I didn't open the message in front of him. I swear I wanted to. My thumb was already hovering over the screen like it had a mind of its own. But something in me, something older, sharper, said don't. So I slipped the phone back into my pocket like it was nothing. Like my world hadn't just tilted. Jason watched me, eyes narrowed. Who's texting you? No one important, I said too quickly. He gave a slow nod like he'd filed that away. Aha! Then he walked toward my kitchen, not waiting for me to follow, and opened my fridge. Just opened it. Like he was still 16 and this house was still his. You got anything to eat? He asked casually. I stared at his back. You didn't come here to eat. He pulled out a bottle of water and took a sip. I can multitask. I didn't answer. Because my brain wasn't even in the kitchen anymore. It was stuck on those words. Don't sign anything. They're coming for you. Who was they? And why was someone warning me now? Jason leaned against the counter, playing relaxed. But his body wasn't relaxed. His leg bounced. His shoulders were tense. Like he was performing calm but couldn't hold it. You're acting weird, he said. No, I replied. I'm acting careful. He laughed. Careful? About what? You think I'm gonna steal your pots and pans? No, I said softly. Just my life savings. His face dropped, and for a split second the mask slipped. Then he forced a chuckle. Wow, bae. Dramatic. But he didn't deny it. That's what hit me hardest. Not the joke. Not the deflection. The absence of denial. He stepped closer, voice lowering like he was offering me peace. Mom. You know I'd never hurt you. I looked at him. Really looked. And suddenly I remembered something from years ago. Jason was 8. He'd fallen off his bike and scraped his knee so badly you could see the raw skin. He'd sobbed like his heart was broken, and I'd held him on the porch swing while he cried into my shirt. That boy wouldn't hurt me. But the man in front of me, he might. Because adulthood doesn't always grow people up. Sometimes it just gives them sharper tools. Jason glanced toward the hallway, toward my office door, the one I kept locked now. What's in there? He asked. Files, I said. Like, important files. I didn't respond fast enough. He smiled again, small, thin. You've never locked that door before. I held my posture steady. Things change. Jason walked toward it slowly, like a predator that didn't need to rush. His hand reached for the knob. Jason, I said, warning in my voice. He paused, turned to me. What? Don't. His expression hardened. Why not? 'Cause I met with my lawyer. 'Cause I started preparing. Because I saw what you were doing before you even admitted it. But I couldn't say that. Not yet. So I swallowed and said the truth. But not all of it. Because it's private. He scoffed. Private from your own son. Especially from my own son, I said, and my voice surprised even me. Jason stared like he didn't recognize me anymore. Then he stepped back, hands up in mock surrender. Okay, fine. Relax. But his eyes were cold now. And that's when I noticed something else. His left hand. It kept tapping his pocket. Not like nerves. Like he was waiting. Like he was checking something. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his entire face changed. Just for a second he looked satisfied. Then he slid it back into his pocket and said, Linda's outside. My stomach twisted. Outside. He nodded toward the front window. She drove me. I didn't hear another car pull up. Which meant she'd been there the whole time. Watching. Listening. Waiting. Jason walked toward the door and called out, Come on in. I felt the air leave my lungs. Because whatever this was, it was never just Jason. It was always the two of them. And when the door opened and Linda stepped inside with that polished smile and those bright, empty eyes, I knew I was standing in the middle of something I didn't fully understand yet. But I was about to. Linda looked at me like she was greeting a stranger at a business meeting. Hi, she said sweetly. We should really talk. And in her hand, she held a folder. Official looking. The kind of folder you bring when you want someone to sign their future away. Then she tilted her head and said, Don't worry. It's just paperwork. And my heart whispered, That's exactly what you should worry about. The pen was already uncapped. Not in my hand. In hers. Linda held it like a weapon she didn't have to swing, because she believed I'd hand her the victory voluntarily. You should sign while Jason's here, she said, setting the folder on my coffee table like it belonged there. It'll make everything clean. Clean. That word made my skin crawl. Because nothing about what they were doing felt clean. Jason hovered behind her shoulder, arms crossed, wearing that same fake calm like a costume. Like he was the reasonable one. The mediator. Mom, he said gently. This isn't a big deal. I didn't sit down. I stayed standing. Because the second you sit, you're already negotiating. I stared at the folder. What is it? Linda smiled, bright and rehearsed. Just an update. Some legal stuff. To make sure things are protected. Protected for who? Asked. For you, she said quickly. Too quickly. For us. For the family. I took one step closer, not to the folder, but to her. Read it to me, I said. Linda blinked like she hadn't planned for that. It's pretty standard. Read it, I repeated. Jason sighed like I was being difficult. Mom, don't do this. Do what? I snapped, turning toward him. Ask what I'm signing before I sign it. Silence. Heavy. The kind of silence where the truth is hiding behind people's teeth. Linda cleared her throat and flipped open the folder. I watched her nails, perfect, polished, slide over the pages like she'd touched them 100 times already. This is a power of attorney, she said, voice smooth. Temporary. Just in case anything happens to you. So Jason can manage things. My mouth went dry. Power of attorney. I knew what that meant. Meant access, control, signatures, counts, property. It meant I could still be alive. And legally powerless. Temporary, I repeated, staring at her. How temporary? She waved a hand. It's just until we feel comfortable. Until we feel comfortable. Not until I felt safe. Not until I chose. Until they decided. I looked at Jason. You brought this into my house. His eyes dropped for a second. That tiny dip of guilt. The smallest crack. Then he hardened again. It's responsible. What's responsible, I said slowly, is you showing up after months of silence and asking me to sign something that gives you control over my entire life. Jason's jaw flexed. You're twisting it. No, I said. I'm finally seeing it. Linda leaned forward, tone turning sharper. You're being paranoid. That word hit me like a slap. Paranoid. Because that's what people call you when you're close to the truth. I took the folder in my hands and flipped through it. Slow, deliberate. I didn't understand every line, but I understood enough. Authority. Bank access. Real estate control. And one line near the bottom that made my stomach drop. Principal acknowledges diminished capacity or anticipated incapacity. I looked up so fast my neck hurt. Diminished capacity. Linda's smile tightened. It's legal language. Legal language that says I'm not mentally capable, I said, voice rising. You're trying to label me incompetent. Jason threw his hands up. It's not like that. Then why is it written like that? I demanded. Linda shrugged, actually shrugged like it was nothing. Like my dignity was a minor inconvenience. It's standard. You're older. Things happen. Older. Like age was a disease. Like being a mother meant my value had an expiration date. I stared at them both and felt something in me go completely still. This wasn't about helping me. This was about controlling me. I thought of that anonymous message again. Don't sign anything. They're coming for you. Whoever sent it, they weren't guessing. They knew. And suddenly I realized something else. Something that made my chest tighten. They weren't trying to convince me because they cared. They were trying to rush me because they were scared. Scared of what? Scared of what I had already done. Quietly. While they thought I was still the same predictable woman who'd fold under pressure. Put the folder back down. Slowly. Then I said, I'm not signing this. Jason's face snapped. Mom. I said no. Linda's smile vanished completely. You don't understand what you're doing. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said, and my voice came out calmer than I expected. You're trying to take my choices away. Jason stepped closer, anger leaking through his calm act. You're making this harder than it needs to be. No, I said, meeting his eyes. You're making it uglier than it needs to be. Linda picked up the pen again, tapping it against the folder like a metronome. If you don't sign, she said softly, we'll have to do this another way. Another way. The air in the room changed. Got colder. Jason didn't protest. He didn't look surprised. Which meant they'd already talked about another way. And that's when fear finally rose up in my throat. Not the small fear of conflict. The bigger fear. The fear that they weren't going to leave until they got something. Linda tilted her head and said, Jason, tell her. Jason stared at me, eyes hard, and said the words that made my blood run cold. Mom, if you won't sign willingly, we can have someone evaluate you. Evaluate me. Like I was unstable. Like they could weaponize my age against me. Like they could drag me into a courtroom and make strangers decide whether I deserved control over my own life. And right then I knew. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war. I took a slow breath, reached into my pocket, and wrapped my fingers around my phone, because the next call I made wasn't to my attorney. It was to someone who could stop this today. And as Linda smiled like she'd already won, I realized. She had no idea what evidence I had waiting in that locked room. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even argue. I just smiled, small, quiet, like I was finally understanding the rules of the game they'd been playing behind my back. Because the second Jason said, evaluate you, something clicked in me. That wasn't a threat you throw out casually. That was a plan. A real one. A plan built in whispered conversations, late-night strategy, and Linda's little notebook brain that treated human beings like chess pieces. And in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. If I panicked, they'd call it proof. If I got emotional, they'd call it instability. So instead, I did the scariest thing I could do. I stayed calm. I reached into my pocket, and I pressed the side button on my phone twice. Record. No announcement. No drama. Just a quiet capture of the truth. Right in my living room, on my couch, in the home I paid for, in the life they were trying to hijack. Linda was still standing there with that folder, like she was offering me salvation instead of a trap. Jason looked tense now, like he regretted letting that word slip. "Jason," I said softly, "who told you that was an option?" He blinked. "What?" "The evaluation," I said, tilting my head. "Who told you that?" He hesitated, then glanced at Linda. "Barely, but enough." Linda stepped in, voice smooth as glass. "It's just responsible planning. If you're not willing to cooperate." "Cooperate?" I repeated. "With what?" "Giving up my rights." Jason exhaled like he was tired of me. "Mom, you're making this bigger than it is." I nodded slowly, like I agreed. Then I said, "Okay. Explain it to me like I'm 5. That caught them. Because people like Linda don't like explaining. Explaining creates details. Details create accountability. But she did it anyway, because she couldn't resist feeling in control. "If you don't sign the power of attorney," she said, "Jason and I can petition for a capacity evaluation." Normal. People do it all the time with elderly parents. Elderly parents. I'm not even that old. I still drive. I still cook. I still pay my bills. I still live alone without a single person taking care of me. But she said it like I was already halfway into a nursing home. I kept my voice even. "So you'd go to court and tell a judge I can't manage my life?" Linda shrugged like it was paperwork. "If necessary." Jason shifted uncomfortably. "It's not like we want to." "But you will," I said, staring at him. "If I don't do what you want." Jason's eyes hardened. "We're family. This shouldn't be a fight." I let out a short breath. "Family doesn't ambush you with legal documents." Linda's tone sharpened. "You're overreacting." And that word again, overreacting. The same word people use when they're trying to shrink you so you'll fit into the story they wrote for you. I walked to the coffee table, picked up the folder, and flipped to the last page. "Jason," I said quietly, "did you read this?" He didn't answer. I looked up. "Did you even read the part where it says I have diminished capacity?" His jaw tightened. "It's legal language." "So you did see it," I said. "And you still brought it here." Jason's voice rose. "Because you're being stubborn." Linda jumped in fast, like she was afraid he'd lose control. "Jason, don't." But I held up my hand. "No. Let him talk. Because angry people say honest things." Jason took a step toward me, and I could smell his frustration. Sharp, bitter, desperate. "You don't get it," he snapped. "Linda and I have a life. We have expenses. We have plans. And you're sitting on all this money like you're going to take it with you." There it was. Not, "I miss you." Not, "I'm worried about you." Plans. Expenses. Money. My throat tightened, but I didn't let it show. I simply asked, "So that's what this is?" Jason looked away for half a second. "It's not just that." Linda's voice came out low, controlled. "We're trying to protect what should be Jason's." What should be Jason's? Like my husband's years of work, our sacrifices, my grief, my whole life was just a prize waiting for them. I felt something ignite in my chest. Not rage. Clarity. And I said slowly, deliberately, "You do understand this recording is happening, right?" Linda's face froze. Jason's eyes widened. The room went dead silent, like even the walls were holding their breath. Linda's voice turned icy. "Recording." I pulled the phone out, screen glowing, and I smiled again, this time without warmth. "Yeah," I said. "I figured since you're planning to tell strangers I'm incompetent, I should start collecting proof of who's really unwell in this room." Jason's face went pale. Linda's eyes flashed. Fast, dangerous. Then she did something I didn't expect. She lunged. Not at me. My phone. Her hand shot out like a snake, fingers grabbing for my device. And in that split second, I realized Linda wasn't just trying to help. She was trying to erase evidence. And as Jason moved to block the door behind me, my heart pounded with one terrifying thought. They weren't leaving until that recording was gone. My phone hit the floor so hard the screen flashed, then went dark. Not because it broke. Because Linda's hand slapped it out of mine with a force that wasn't concerned. It was rage. Pure ugly rage. "Are you insane?" she hissed, breathing fast, eyes wild for the first time. The mask was gone now. The sweet little family act. Jason stepped toward me, not to protect me. No, he stepped like he was closing the distance. Like he was closing the space where I could breathe. "Mom," he said low. "Give her the phone." I looked at him, trying to find any trace of the boy I raised. The boy who once cried when he stepped on a snail by accident. But what I saw in his eyes was something else. A man who'd already chosen sides. "Aren't you hearing yourself?" I said, my voice trembling despite everything I was doing to keep it steady. "She just assaulted me in my living room." Linda snapped back. "Assaulted you? Please. You're being dramatic again." Dramatic. There it was. The word they kept using like a sedative. Like if they said it enough times, I'd start believing I was the problem. I bent down slowly, keeping my movements controlled, and picked up my phone. My fingers shook. But the device was still recording. The little red dot was still there. And Linda saw it. Her face twisted. "Turn it off. Now." Jason moved to the front door and, God help me, he locked it. Blick. That sound didn't just lock the door. It locked reality into place. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a trap. "Jason," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Open the door." He didn't. He just stared at me and said, "You're not going to ruin our lives with some stupid recording." Our lives. Not my safety. Not my dignity. Not my right to breathe freely in my own home. Linda took a step closer, voice silky again like she'd regained control. "Sweetie, you don't want to do this. You don't want to make enemies out of your own family." Enemies. So she knew. She knew this had crossed a line. I backed up slowly until my calves hit the edge of the couch. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. And I realized something terrifying. If they were willing to corner me. If they were willing to physically snatch the phone. If Jason was willing to lock the door. What else were they willing to do? Linda reached for the folder again, tapping it like she was resetting the conversation. "Let's keep this simple," she said. "Sign. Then we can all calm down." I laughed, just once, short and bitter. "You want me to sign after you just tried to steal evidence?" Linda's eyes narrowed. "Evidence of what? You being unstable. Because that's exactly how you sound right now." My stomach flipped. That was the game. Push me. Corner me. Then call my fear proof. Jason stepped forward, voice harder now. "Mom, stop. You're acting crazy." Crazy. From my own son. I felt tears burn behind my eyes. Not because I believed him, but because I couldn't believe he could say it. And right then, something inside me shifted. Not into panic. Into protection. I reached into my pocket. Slowly, and wrapped my hand around my keys. The sharpest key dug into my palm. Not to hurt anyone. To remind myself I still had agency. Still had force. Still had choice. Linda noticed the movement. Her smile came back, thin and mean. "What are you doing?" "Trying to leave," I said. Jason blocked the hallway. "You're not going anywhere until we fix this." Fix this. Like I was a problem to manage. Linda's voice dropped into a whisper. "If you walk out, we'll tell everyone you're losing it." Jason nodded, almost like he'd rehearsed it. "We'll call your doctor. We'll call the court. You'll regret this." My chest felt tight, like the air had turned thick. And then, right as I was calculating whether I could run past them, my phone vibrated in my hand. New call. Unknown number again. My breath caught. I lifted the phone, and the screen showed two words that made my heart slam. "Answer. Now." I stared at that call like it was a lifeline. Then looked up and saw Linda's eyes flick to the phone with pure alarm. Whatever was on the other end, she didn't want me to hear it, and suddenly I knew. The person warning me wasn't a stranger. It was someone who knew exactly what Jason and Linda were planning, before they even stepped into my house. I answered without thinking. "Hello." My voice came out shaky, breathless, like I'd been running even though I was standing still. For a second there was only silence. Then a voice, low, urgent, said my name. "Mrs. Carter, listen to me carefully. Don't let them take your phone. Don't sign anything. And don't stay in that house alone with them." Froze. Because the voice wasn't a stranger. It was familiar. I just couldn't place it yet. Linda's eyes widened the moment she heard the tone. Jason took a step toward me like he wanted to grab the phone again. I backed up instinctively. "Who is this?" I whispered. The voice exhaled. "It doesn't matter right now. What matters is you're in danger." I heard them talking. My stomach dropped. "You heard them talking?" Linda snapped. "Who are you on the phone with?" But it sounded less like a question and more like panic disguised as authority. The voice continued, faster now. "They've been telling people you're confused. That you forget things. That you can't handle finances anymore. They want to build a case." My throat tightened. "Build a case for what?" "A guardianship," the voice said. That word hit harder than evaluation. Guardianship. That wasn't just paperwork. That was legal captivity. That was someone else getting power to decide where I lived, what I did, even what I spent. Linda moved again, quick, and Jason grabbed her arm, stopping her, but not because he was protecting me. Because he didn't want her to look guilty on camera. He looked at me with a cold warning in his eyes. Like, "Hang up." I didn't. Instead, I pressed the phone closer to my ear and whispered, "How do you know this?" And the voice hesitated, just a beat, then said, "Because I was there when Linda asked the attorney about it." My heart slammed. Linda's attorney. So this wasn't a random rumor. This was organized, planned. I stared at Linda, and she stared back with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. A smile that said, "You're trapped." Jason tried to step into my space again. "Mom. Enough." But I raised a hand. "Don't come closer." He stopped. Only because he saw something in my face he hadn't seen before. I wasn't scared anymore. I was alert. The voice on the phone said, "Do you have someone you can call right now? A neighbor? Friend? Anyone who can come over?" My mind raced. I didn't want to admit it, but after my husband died, my world had gotten smaller, quieter. I had a few friends, yes. Some neighbors I waved to. But I wasn't the kind of woman who asked for help easily. Still, I forced myself to say, "Yes. Yes. Call them," the voice said. "Now. And keep them on speaker. Make sure there's a witness." Linda's tone cut through, sharp. "You're being manipulated." I stared at her. "You're terrified." Linda's mouth tightened. "Jason, take the phone." Jason stepped forward again. "Mom." I raised the phone like a shield. One more step and this recording goes straight to the police. He froze. He actually froze. And that confirmed what I'd been trying not to admit. They knew they'd crossed lines that weren't just emotional. They'd crossed legal ones. The voice on the phone was still talking. "Mrs. Carter, did you record anything already?" "Yes," I whispered. "I did." "Good," the voice said. "Email it to yourself. Right now. And if your phone gets taken, your evidence doesn't disappear." Linda snapped. "You're not emailing anything." She lunged again, and this time Jason didn't stop her. He moved too. Like a coordinated attack. Like they'd practiced it. Adrenaline surged through me so hard my hands went numb. I bolted toward the hallway, clutching my phone. Jason caught my arm tight. His grip was strong. Too strong. "Stop acting like a victim," he hissed right in my face. I stared at him, chest heaving. "Let go of me." Linda's fingers clawed toward my phone. "Give it here." And right then, right as I thought, "This is it, they're going to take everything," A sound exploded through the house. Not from my phone. From outside. A loud, urgent pounding at my front door. 3 hard knocks. Then a voice shouted, "Mrs. Carter, open up." "It's me." Linda went stiff. Jason released my arm like he'd been burned. And I knew instantly. Whoever was at that door, Linda did not want them inside. I rushed toward the door, heart racing, and just as my hand touched the lock, Linda's voice snapped behind me, cold and venomous. "If you open that door, you're going to regret it." And in that second, I realized the next person who walked into my home could either save me, or expose a secret that would blow this whole nightmare wide open. The lock clicked, and the second I cracked the door open, cold air rushed in like a warning. Standing on my porch was Mr. Harlan, my next-door neighbor, still in his work jacket, breath visible, eyes sharp like he'd sprinted over. One hand was braced on his knee like he'd run hard. The other held his phone up. "I heard shouting," he said, voice loud on purpose. "Are you okay?" Behind me, I felt Linda's presence like a shadow. Jason's too. The whole room went silent in that way it does when predators realize someone's watching. "I'm fine," Linda said quickly, sliding into the doorway like she lived here. Her smile was back, polished, sweet, fake. "Just a family misunderstanding." Mr. Harlan didn't even look at her. He looked straight at me. Not at my son. Not at Linda. Me. "You want me to come in?" he asked. My throat tightened. I nodded once. "Yes." Linda's smile twitched. Just barely. But it twitched. Mr. Harlan stepped inside calmly, like a man who knew exactly what calm could do to people who wanted chaos. He took one slow look around. Me breathing hard, Jason standing too close, Linda gripping that folder like a weapon. Then he said, "I'm not leaving until I know she's safe." Jason forced a laugh. "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" Mr. Harlan asked, voice flat. "Because I heard enough through the wall to know it didn't sound like a birthday party." Linda's eyes cut toward me. "Why would you involve a neighbor?" I turned to her slowly. "Why would you lock my door?" Jason stiffened. "I didn't." Mr. Harlan cut in, holding his phone up slightly. "I'm already on a call." Linda's expression froze. "On a call with who?" Mr. Harlan didn't answer right away. He just looked at Jason and said, "You're going to want to back up. Give her space." Jason's jaw clenched, but he stepped back one step. Not because he respected me. Because he respected witnesses. I swallowed, then held my own phone up. "I recorded everything." Linda snapped. "You recorded private family conversation. That's illegal." I stared at her. "You tried to force me to sign a power of attorney that says I'm mentally unfit." Linda's smile collapsed. "That is not what it says." "It is," I said. "And you know it." Jason lifted his hands. "Mom, you're spiraling. You're—" "No," I cut him off, and the word came out like a blade. "I'm waking up." For a moment nobody spoke. Then Mr. Harlan said something that made my stomach flip again. "I also got a message," he said. And blinked. "A message?" He nodded. "From a woman. She said if I heard trouble I should come over immediately. Said you might need a witness." My blood went cold. Woman. The same one who texted me. The same unknown number. The same voice on the call. So this wasn't random. Someone had been watching this unfold from a distance. Close enough to know timing. Close enough to predict they'd corner me. Linda's face went tight like she'd swallowed glass. "This is harassment." Mr. Harlan shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe someone's trying to keep an older woman from getting bullied in her own house." Jason snapped, voice sharp now, dropping the nice guy act completely. "Nobody is bullying anyone." I turned to him. "Then why are you here with legal paperwork and threats?" His eyes flashed. "Because you're selfish." There it was again. The core truth. Not love. Not concern. Entitlement. Linda stepped forward, voice low and dangerous. "You're making a scene." I laughed, small, shaking. "No, Linda. You made the scene. I'm just finally turning the lights on." Then she did something that made my stomach twist harder than anything else. She looked at Jason and nodded once. Silent signal. Jason reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document I hadn't seen before. He held it up like a surprise card. "You want to play hard," he said. "Fine. Then I'll show you what we already started." My breath caught. "What is that?" Jason's smile came back. Thin, cruel, confident. "A petition," he said. "For emergency guardianship." And he looked me dead in the eyes and added, "We filed it this morning." The room tilted. My knees nearly buckled. Because if that petition was real, they'd already begun the legal attack. But before I could speak, Mr. Harlan's phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the screen, went pale and whispered, "She's here." Then the doorbell chimed, and I heard a woman's voice outside say, "Mrs. Carter, I need to tell you what Linda did." The doorbell rang again. Not a polite little ding. Long press. Like whoever was outside had been holding their breath for hours and finally decided. Enough. Mr. Harlan moved first, steady and calm, and opened the door. A woman stepped in. Mid-40s, tired eyes, hair pulled back like she didn't come for attention. She came for truth. She held her phone in one hand and a thick envelope in the other. And the second Linda saw her, Linda's face went white. Not pale. Like the blood drained out of her body all at once. "Melissa," Linda whispered, and it came out like a curse. Melissa's gaze didn't even flinch. She walked straight past Linda, straight toward me, and said quietly, "Mrs. Carter, I'm sorry it took me this long." My mouth opened but no sound came out. Jason looked confused. "Who is this?" Linda snapped. "She shouldn't be here." Melissa turned her head just slightly and said, "You don't get to decide who should be here anymore." The way she said it, simple, flat, made my spine tingle. This woman had been holding something back for a long time. And she was done holding. Melissa looked at me and softened. "I'm the one who texted you. I'm the one who called you. I'm the one who warned your neighbor." I swallowed hard. "Why?" Melissa's eyes flickered to Jason, then back to me. "Because Linda asked me to do something, and I couldn't live with it." Jason frowned. "Linda asked you to do what?" Linda lunged forward, voice sharp and panicked. "Melissa, stop. This is not your business." Melissa didn't move. She just raised the envelope slightly. "Oh, it's my business. You made it my business when you tried to use my license to destroy her." My blood ran cold. License. Doctor. Therapist. Nurse. I looked at Melissa, searching her face. Melissa took a slow breath and said, "I'm a social worker. I do capacity assessments sometimes. Linda contacted me through a mutual friend and asked me if I would evaluate you." Jason's face shifted. "Evaluate my mom?" Melissa nodded. "She didn't say evaluate at first. She said she was worried. She said you were confused, forgetful, unstable." Linda cut in, voice trembling with anger. "Because she is." Melissa snapped her eyes to Linda, sharp. "No. Because you wanted a paper trail." Jason's mouth opened slightly. He looked at Linda. "Linda, is that true?" Linda's voice got sweet again, desperate. "Jason, don't listen to her. She's..." Melissa held up her phone. "I have the messages." Linda froze. Melissa continued, each word landing like a hammer. "You asked me to write that she had diminished capacity. You asked me what language would help in court. You asked me," she paused, and her voice turned lower, more disgusted, "how fast you could get emergency guardianship approved." Jason stared at Linda like he didn't recognize her. And maybe he didn't. 'Cause people like Linda are mirrors. They reflect what you want to see until they don't need you anymore. "Linda," Jason said slowly, "tell me you didn't do that." Linda's eyes flashed. "I did it for us." There it was. The truth. She didn't even deny it. She straightened her shoulders like she was proud. Like she was the architect and we were too stupid to appreciate her design. "I did it because your mother is stubborn and selfish," she said. She's sitting on money and property while we're struggling. While we're trying to think about our kids. You don't have kids, I whispered before I could stop myself. Linda's head snapped toward me. Not yet. But we will. I felt my stomach twist. So even the future children, imaginary children, were being used as a reason to take from me. Jason looked like he'd been slapped. You said you wanted to help her. I am helping, Linda insisted. Once we have control, she'll calm down. She'll be safer. And everything will be handled properly. Handled properly. Like I was a task. Problem. File. Melissa stepped closer to me and lowered her voice. Mrs. Carter, I refused. I told her it was unethical. I told her I wouldn't lie. Linda hissed. You didn't refuse. You asked questions. Melissa's eyes hardened. Because I wanted to understand how deep the manipulation was. Then Melissa held up the envelope. This, she said, is a copy of the petition they filed. The one Jason just waved around like a trophy. Jason stiffened. How do you have that? Melissa turned toward him. Because Linda sent it to me by mistake. She forwarded it while trying to loop me in. Jason's face drained as he stared at the envelope. He looked at Linda again. You filed this. Linda's jaw trembled. Yes. Jason's voice broke, just slightly. Without telling me. Linda snapped. I was protecting you. You'd hesitate. You'd get emotional. You'd mess it up. There it was again. Not, I love you. Not, I care. Control. Jason's hands curled into fists. You used me. Linda's eyes went cold. I used the situation. And that's when I realized something even darker. Linda didn't just manipulate me. She manipulated him too. But that didn't make him innocent. Just made him human. Weak. And now, finally, he was facing the monster he invited into our lives. I swallowed, voice shaking. Jason. Do you understand what you did to me? He looked at me, and for the first time all day I saw something real. Not anger. Not entitlement. Fear. And maybe guilt. Mom, he started. But Linda cut in fast, venomous. Don't you dare. She's playing you. Melissa stepped forward, voice firm. No, Linda. You're exposed. Linda's eyes flicked around the room. Me, Jason, Mr. Harlan, Melissa. Like she was counting allies and realizing she had none. Then she made a sudden decision. She grabbed her folder, spun toward the door and said, Fine. Do what you want. But you're too late. Froze. Too late for what? Linda smiled, slow, cruel, right before she walked out. Because the court date is already set, she said softly. And once a judge hears the word capacity, good luck getting your life back. And the door shut behind her. The silence afterward felt like aftermath. Jason stood there, shaking, staring at the floor like the ground had betrayed him too. Melissa looked at me and said, Mrs. Carter, you need to move fast. Because Linda didn't just file paperwork. She swallowed. She also contacted your bank. My heart stopped. My bank, I whispered. And Melissa nodded, eyes serious. She tried to flag your account. Then Mr. Harlan's phone buzzed, and he read the screen out loud. One sentence that made my blood run ice cold. Unauthorized access attempt detected on Mrs. Carter's accounts. The bank notification didn't feel real at first. Felt like one of those messages you read twice because your brain refuses to accept it. No. That can't be happening. Not to me. Not in my house. Not from my own son and his wife. But it was real. And the scariest part. For a few seconds, I just stood there, frozen, holding my phone like it was a lifeline, while my entire body tried to decide whether to collapse or fight. Then something inside me snapped into place. Not anger. Not revenge. Survival. Melissa, I said, voice shaking. What do I do right now? She didn't hesitate. You call your bank's fraud line and your attorney. Immediately. And you do it on speaker. With witnesses. So I did. Right there. In my living room. With Jason standing in the corner like a stranger wearing my son's face. The bank rep came on. I gave my name, my details, my voice trembling, until it didn't. Because the more I spoke, the steadier I became. They confirmed an attempt. Flag. A request for access on my behalf. On my behalf. I almost laughed. This was what my life had come to. People forging my own voice. Lock everything, I said. New passwords. New pins. Put a note that no one speaks for me. No one. The bank rep said, "Yes, ma'am." Like my words mattered again. Then I called my attorney. And when my attorney heard guardianship petition, heard power of attorney coercion, heard capacity manipulation, his tone changed into something I can only describe as calm fury. He said one sentence that made my knees weak with relief. "Do not worry. We're going to shut this down. Because here's what Linda didn't know. While she was busy plotting, I was quietly preparing. That locked office door she kept staring at. It wasn't hiding files. It was hiding my backbone. Copies of my medical records showing I'm fine. Clean history. My financial statements showing I manage everything. Notes from my lawyer. Names of witnesses. And now, thanks to my own instincts, the recording. The one she tried to erase. And that's when I turned to Jason. He looked broken. Like a man waking up in the middle of a nightmare and realizing he helped build it. "Mom," he said softly. "I didn't know she was going this far." I stared at him for a long moment. Then I said the truth. Quiet. Clean. Unshakable. "You still came here. You still locked my door. You still called me crazy." He swallowed. "I'm sorry. And that's the thing about sorry. Sometimes it's real. Sometimes it's fear wearing a softer face." I nodded once. "You can be sorry. But you don't get access." His eyes watered. What does that mean?" "It means you're my son," I said, voice cracking. "But you are not my keeper. You are not my owner. And you are not entitled to the last chapter of my life." He tried to speak again, but I lifted my hand. "No," I said. "Listen. I loved you enough to raise you. I will not love you enough to let you destroy me." That sentence hurt more than anything I'd said that day. But it saved me. Over the next week, everything moved fast. The court petition didn't stand a chance once my attorney submitted Melissa's evidence, my recordings, and proof of coercion. The judge didn't wonder if I was confused. The judge wondered why anyone was trying so hard to prove I was. The bank locked down my accounts. Fraud notes were placed. Security questions changed. Access attempts flagged. And Linda. She vanished the moment the spotlight hit her. Like all bullies do when they realize the room is no longer dark. Jason came back, alone, days later. No folder. No smile. No act. He stood at my door and said, "Can we talk?" I looked at him and felt something surprising. Not rage. Quiet, hard peace. "Maybe someday," I told him. "But not until you learn the difference between love and possession." Then I closed the door. Not out of hatred. Out of strength. Because the lesson I learned, late but forever, was this. Your kindness is not a contract. Your children are not your owners. And being family doesn't give anyone the right to rewrite your life in ink you didn't choose. That day, I didn't just protect my money. I protected my dignity. I protected my voice. I protected the woman I became after grief tried to erase me. And if you're listening to this and you feel that familiar tightness in your chest, like someone in your life is helping you a little too aggressively, hear me. Trust that feeling. Ask questions. Put things in writing. And never sign your power away just to keep the peace. Because peace that costs you your freedom isn't peace. It's a cage. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've lived through something similar, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.